following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. Hello, listeners around the world on radio, streaming, and podcast services. This is It's Not Therapy. I'm Liana, and I am not a therapist, but I am your source for navigating the madness of mental health using my top 10 sayings for going good crazy. This week, it's my first list of 2026, and if I do say so myself, it's a great one because it's about things that are terrible. We're going to talk about 9 pieces of bad mental health advice that are so normal that many of you listening have probably gone numb to the awful. Or you don't even consider them. They just fly out of your mouth because they're colloquialisms. And that's okay. We all do it. The number 1 on this list, or the number 9, depending on, I don't remember how I'm going to order them, but the last one is one I had to remove from my vocabulary because it's bad, right? Like actively damaging. And don't worry, I'm going to tell you why. And when I can, I'm going to give you substitutes for them. That's the word. Words, right, substitute. Got it. Let's go. Let's start with the first really terrible piece of super common mental health advice. It's kind of self-explanatory. Calm down. Also presented, usually by government, as remain calm. I can count on one hand the number of times telling someone to calm down actually worked and didn't backfire. We've all seen those movies, right? Where someone on an intercom tells a crowd to remain calm and that's the crowd's cue to panic, right? And it's funny because it's predictable. Telling someone to calm down can actually add to their stress because it can make them feel anxious or guilty about feeling understandable bad stuff. It also risks minimizing or dismissing a person's legitimate feelings. Now, it's perfectly okay to tell someone that you can't take being screamed at. You don't have to accept verbal abuse, but that's focusing on their behavior, not their state of mind. There's a big in-between zone between totally calm and totally losing it, and emotional grown-ups are able to be not calm and still be in control of themselves. In these situations where someone is unnerving you with aggression, instead of going, calm down, or sir, I need you to remain calm, suggest, taking a few minutes to lower the temperature. If you can, take a walk. If it's a close relationship, take a moment to reconnect with the positive feelings you have for each other. Like, remind yourself you like each other, right? So, you shouldn't be incapable of feeling caring for someone or a group or a thing just because you're temporarily angry or panicked. Anger and panic are temporary. And using it as a justification for blowing up or other bad behavior isn't going to help you change that not useful behavioral reaction to stress. When you're feeling worked up, instead of barking orders at yourself, calm down, or worse, deflecting and projecting at other people, telling them to calm down when they're not the one that's worked up, practice self-compassion, right? Top 10 phrase, self-esteem cannot exist without self-compassion. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to be angry. It's not okay to lash out, verbally abuse, or hurt people. Those last 3 things, those are actions, not feelings. Instead of calm down, I'll get through this. That's self-reassuring, right? I'll get through this is like, all right, that's validation. Calm down is an order. And our lizard brains don't like being told what to do in the best of circumstances. And this is where someone always says, but being told to calm down helps me. Okay, maybe you're a BDSM sub. I don't judge, right? Maybe you are very neurodivergent and you find that helpful. Great if it works for you, but you're in the minority. And the phrases I've suggested will work just as well for those people. So stop being a contrarian. And if it is a kink for you, stop getting people to non-consensually participate in your kink. That's not how it's supposed to work. Oh, but you didn't mean to do that. You didn't mean to be a contrarian. You didn't mean to smear your kinky stuff all over people. That's the second bit of bad mental health advice. Rearing its unhelpful head. They didn't mean it. They didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. That's number 2 on our list, or number 8 if you want to count down, backwards. Well, it's often true that you didn't mean to, they didn't mean to. It's an emotional get out of jail free card that transfers the burden of emotional labor off the person who did it and onto the person they did it to. And sometimes that doesn't matter. But when it does, that's bad for both people's mental health. For the person who did the thing they didn't mean to do, avoiding accountability can lead to guilt, potentially even shame, but also a potential sense of imposter syndrome or learned helplessness. If you never mean to, how do you live a conscious life where your goals get met, right? For the person it was done to, they didn't mean to, sends the message that the person it was done to is somehow in the wrong for being hurt. Not meaning to doesn't make it all better. It might not even make it any better. It might even make it worse. Hear me out on that one. If someone has done something consciously, at least partially, they can consciously not do it next time, right? But if the person was totally unaware, they had no idea, they're more likely to repeat the behavior. And if they didn't mean to's stack up, it can send the message to the person that is constantly being hurt and constantly just getting hit with, I didn't mean to, they didn't mean to. Why doesn't this make you feel better? That really risks diminishing someone's pain or objection. Now, they didn't mean to is in a lot of ways worse than I didn't mean to, because messages ideally come from the person who actually did it. Instead of third parties cleaning up their messes, you're not helping. But if you are someone who frequently doesn't mean to, make sure you're not overusing that phrase as, I say this to help, a lazy get out of jail free card. People are eventually going to get fed up with your chronic, I didn't mean to, your chronic cluelessness, your chronic lack of consideration for other people, especially if you keep not meaning to on the same issue. I didn't mean to, or they didn't mean to, has to be the beginning of a conversation, not the end, because the best way to show that you didn't mean to is to listen to the other person so that you can recalibrate your awareness going forward. If I had $1 for every time someone didn't mean to, and they actually knew what they did wasn't great when they did it, I'd be rich. I caught someone in that just last week. Some people learn that I didn't mean to will shut people up. Some people even believe that it should make people feel better. But think about it, okay? This is going to blow your mind, okay? If someone ruined your favorite sweater and they say, I didn't mean to, does that repair your favorite sweater? No, it doesn't. It doesn't solve the problem. It might even make you more frustrated because you're like, why weren't you paying more attention? If someone breaks that super valuable collectible you've been keeping, you're super proud of it, you paid $300 from it, and someone accidentally messes it over, does I didn't mean to bring back the value of that collectible? Nope. If someone spills red wine all over your white tablecloth at dinner, even if they didn't hit another guest, they didn't mean to, but someone still has to clean it up. Imagine if that person just sat there saying, I didn't mean to, I didn't mean to, I didn't mean to, expecting you to handle the mess before it leaks onto, your boss or your grandma. That's exactly what happens emotionally when you over-rely on they didn't mean to, I didn't mean to. Adults clean up their own messes. And if you have children, it's even more important to set the example that if you damage or dirty something, including another person's feelings, the best way to recover from that is to offer some sort of restitution. Now, sometimes that's just listening and showing understanding of the person's hurt feelings instead of just batting it away with, I didn't mean to. You can't really listen twice before you talk once if you think that I didn't mean to should let you off the hook in some way. I have multiple clients who grew up hearing they didn't mean to about their parents or other caregivers, or a version of it, the infamous they did their best. Yeah, well, their best wasn't good enough. These statements are not substitutes, not by a long shot, for actually meeting a child's emotional needs for them to feel safe and cared for. It is a potential marker of neglect, I have found. Unlike calm down, which, it's better to just remove from your vocabulary, that one. They didn't mean to. It's more of a don't say it as the end, like I said, instead of the beginning. If you can avoid it, great. If you think it's relevant, that shouldn't be left as the only communication. When I unknowingly hurt someone, I will say, I had no idea, and I'm very sorry. I know now, so I'll watch that. I see where you're coming from. I wouldn't feel good in your place either. Empathy. That empathy. That's, I didn't mean to, but I understand why it was a problem for you. That's the actual reassuring, validating part that can bring people closer together. Similarly, saying, I know they didn't do it on purpose, but I understand why you're upset. You have every right to be upset is a totally different message. Phrased that way, you're not taking sides regarding someone's emotional burden and taking the side of the person who's not there. Now, this isn't the same as someone falsely accusing you of something. No. You don't say, I didn't mean to lie. I've actually had someone say that to me, and it was the biggest crock of, I'll say, baloney. Lies are deliberate. Similarly, you don't have to accept someone telling you that you meant something you didn't. This is about recognizing the reality that I didn't mean to eventually start sounding like I'm incapable of doing better because I don't pay enough attention. And you know what? People have the right to want better from the people around them than that. No one owes you forgiveness. That ties into number 3 or 7, depending on how you're counting, on the list of totally normal phrases that are really bad mental health advice. And we'll get to that after the break. Do you have a story you think would be good for the show? Are you interested in sponsoring the show? Do you have a topic you'd like discussed on It's Not Therapy? Not Therapy Show is the website. Liana at nottherapyshow.com is my direct email. At Not Therapy Show is socials on socials. Right. Social handle. That's self-explanatory. Totally normalized bad mental health advice when we come back on It's Not Therapy.
The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca.
We're back on It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. I am still listing 9 really common, terrible pieces of mental health advice, bad mental health advice, that have become so normalized we don't even think about it. And we did 2 terrible pieces of mental health advice that are batted around all the time. But they were, calm down, and they didn't mean to. And I said, when talking about the they didn't mean to, I said that no one owes you forgiveness. And that's true. The only way forgiveness is healing for everyone involved is if it's freely given, which is why it drives me crazy that the third item or seventh item on the list of bad mental health advice, this one is so normalized that it was treated as a feminine superpower on a Doctor Who Christmas special. It was the one where we got David Tennant. My friend gave me that one, David Tennant, because he was a 10th Doctor. And then he came back as 14th Doctor. So he's David Tennant. Yeah, that was funny. What they did to Donna Noble, making Just Let It Go a superpower, was not funny. Yeah, just let it go. The Disney Frozen advice. Now, people think that Let It Go is a big girl power moment for Elsa in the movie. It's actually the part of the movie where Elsa decides to become a hermit, dooming her entire kingdom to freeze to death, and she almost ends up killing her sister. Yeah, that's what Let It Go really means, right? Go away so we don't have to be bothered with your problems, or just do shut up about it. Be emotional hermit. It guilts a person into a choice between forced forgiveness or emotional suppression, because just letting things go on cue isn't psychologically possible. Another comment that's not quite the same, but it's so similar that I'll count it as the same wheelhouse, the same bad habit, is you need to move on. Releasing trauma and grief is a process. The best way to delay that process that I have personally experienced is for someone to demand I do it on their timeline. What ends up happening in these situations is that the traumatized, grieving person just ends up feeling guilty and helpless that they're traumatized and or grieving. And that adds another layer of glue, keeping them stuck to the past. Trauma isn't holding a grudge. Trauma is an emotional injury. Can you yell at a physical injury, tell it to just heal already, right? You break your leg, you break your arm, going, just heal already, let it go. Does it just magically happen? No, of course not. Emotional injury, there's the same way, you know? And grief is a uniquely complex mix of emotions. So is trauma, sure, but grief, no two people grieve in the same way. And some people just take more time to do it than others. And occasionally, even years later, you grieve a bit for the people you lost. But you know what? In little bits, that can be a beautiful thing. It means that person you lost mattered. And what I'm going to say next is not, the calm, serene mental health advice, which is why I don't do a show where I talk like this and play like synthesized Asian music in the background. No, I don't do BS ASMR voice, because here's what I truly believe. Acceptance sucks. Acceptance sucks. I choke on acceptance sometimes. It sucks. It's also necessary to heal. Our brains will drive us crazy trying to regain a sense of control if we don't accept. And getting stuck on past events is one way it does that. It just keeps trying to run the scenario to get a different result, and it can't. So instead of telling someone to just let it go, don't Elsa, be like Anna, build a snowman, right? What's something that'll make you feel more in control of your life? Or what's something that will help you maybe start to get closure? Sometimes time helps, but time is usually just space for process. If you try to force someone to let go of their emotional life raft before they've reached solid ground, you're just risking drowning them in despair, right? This stuff cannot be forced. And telling someone, especially telling them multiple times, to just move on or let it go, the only thing you're really successfully doing is driving them away. Which, there's another piece of terrible mental health advice tied to this topic, right? It's tied to forgiveness. And I'm going to use that next, okay? Totally normalized, totally common, terrible piece of bad mental health advice. That is forgive and forget. As best I can tell, I looked this up. This was originally, this idea of forgive and forget, it was popularized by Cervantes in the story of Don Quixote, which was a story about a guy who lost his mind, which is pretty important context. Forgiveness, when you can do it, it's great. But like I said, it should never be pressured or forced. Forget? No, that's just treating that as a virtue. Excuse me, that's stupid. I don't do that often. I'm calling stupid on forgive and forget as a virtue because of the forget part. Okay? Benefit of the doubt is a finite resource. And glorifying selective amnesia just erodes people's right to have boundaries. If someone does something wrong, it's in everyone's best interest, everyone, including the person who screwed up, it's in everyone's best interest for them to make it right. Again, this benefits the person who screwed up too. It helps them build real self-esteem as well as repairs the rupture in relationships that they caused. If you have relationships where it's like, okay, if you screw up, you make it right. You don't have to walk around with anxiety, afraid the bottom is going to drop out of your relationships every time you make a mistake. Making forgive and forget the standard just benefits not great people who don't actually want to do better. They want a clean slate every time so they can keep saying, I didn't mean to. When are you going to let that go? Forgive and forget, right? See how these things compound? Yeah, don't be that guy. Everyone's like, oh my God, I've been that guy. Yes, everyone has been that guy. That is the point of this show. These things are so common, right? When really painful things happen, they're always an opportunity to learn and grow. And things, they can be even better than they were before the rupture. That can't happen if everyone forgets. Like, they're all subjected to that ridiculous curse from that show Once Upon a Time. You know, at the end of the season, they all, forget everything again. There's a reason that device got old on that show by season 3, where, remember when, Peter Pan was this creepy bad guy? It's, spoilers! Let's move on, okay. A similarly ridiculous but normal piece of bad mental health advice, now that I think I've made my point that forgive and forget is stupid, comes up next. This equally just, this is one of these things. I'm very logical sometimes and very literal. And so this is one that frosts me. Frozen, Elsa, Frost, Snowman. Yeah. Don't let it get to you. Don't let it get to you. Says people always after something has already bothered a person and therefore gotten to them. No one lets something get to them. It's done against our will. So this aphorism is just victim blaming, and seriously, let's stop it, okay? People are totally allowed to be legitimately hurt by things, and saying don't let it get to you just enables bullying by putting the responsibility entirely on the victim instead of telling the verbally abusive person to cut it out or cutting contact. Okay, sometimes intervening directly will make it worse. Watch that. I don't recommend that in all cases. In fact, I probably don't recommend it in the majority of cases. Use your judgment. That's why we judge, okay? That's the healthy way to judge. But instead of going, don't let it get to you, another thing you can say is something that's just true. You are not responsible for their cruelty, right? Make it clear that the problem is the bully, not the target of the bullying. That's proven to make people feel better. That's the only thing science says actually helps after the fact, right? Strategizing what to do about the bully, okay, that's what we're doing. But don't make it sound like the victim's behavior is the problem. All right, it's time for our second break. When we come back, why the idea of emotional control, which is what Don't Let It Get to You is wrapped up in, why this overall is a terrible piece of mental health advice. Questions, comments, concerns. Do you have a piece of mental health advice that you just cannot personally stand? Liana at nottherapyshow.com. Nottherapyshow.com is the website with the contact form. At nottherapyshow on socials. 9 pieces of totally normal, bad mental health advice when we come back on It's Not Therapy.
The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca.
We're back in It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. We are still talking about 9 pieces of terrible mental health advice that have become totally normal and mainstream. And we've done 5 so far. Calm down or remain calm. They didn't mean to. Just let it go or just move on. Forgive and forget. And don't let it get to you. And now we'll get to number 6. And this, full disclosure, was something that was bellowed at me my entire childhood. And it never worked. Because not only is screaming this demand at a child utterly ironic, it's just not possible. Now, what was that demand? Learn to control your emotions. Another version of this is just snap out of it. You cannot control your initial emotional response. This is science. It happens too fast, and often it's rooted in stuff we're not totally consciously aware of. You can't control it. What you can control is your response to your emotions, especially overwhelming ones. Now, this was a huge stumbling block for me in PTSD recovery. The more I tried to control how I felt, the less in control I was, because I was trying to do the impossible and it was backfiring. When I finally realized that I couldn't control how I felt, which was a big part of healing from the abuse at the core of the trauma, right? I could only control how I responded, reacted, behaved in response to those feelings. I finally started to get some improvements. And here's the thing. Real talk again. This is a big real talk episode. It's actually good that we can't control our emotions because feelings are feedback. If someone shuts out useful feedback, they tend to make terrible decisions. Instead of trying to control emotions, it's so much better to listen to them, to sit down with well, this is water, but to sit down with a drink and go, okay, feeling, what are you telling me? Spill the tea. Water. Sometimes acting on a feeling can be beneficial. If you always feel insecure and anxious around your so-called friends, maybe you need better friends. But sometimes a response to a feeling is better done internally. Reassuring yourself that it's okay. You're safe now. Check your assumptions about a situation. Focus on what you know versus what you're just afraid of. Is there a way to set expectations that lessens those fears? These are the things we can actually control inside us. And we get this control by listening to our feelings, not trying to control them or force them away. When you're dealing with depression or chronic acute anxiety, control your emotions, just snap out of it. These cause major problems, but despite all the awareness campaigns, I still hear it. A person can't just instantly pull themselves out of clinical depression or an anxiety disorder. The underlying causes of the condition have to be addressed for a person to improve. And that usually involves pretty big changes to their environments. And it's precisely for this reason that changes have to be done methodically instead of through snap decisions. Distancing from a social group, changing jobs, starting an entirely new career, or going no contact from family, these are big decisions. And they should be thought through carefully. When you put intense pressure on someone to just snap their fingers and be better, it can send them into a state of desperation or panic. And that tends to result in very poor decision making. Furthermore, telling someone to snap out of it sends the message that they're an annoyance or a burden to you. And that increases the underlying reasons for depression of anxiety instead of, lessening it. Instead, encourage the person to make specific, small, meaningful changes, healthy goals based on things they can control, to try to get the reward chemicals in their brain firing again. Pivot away from obligation and toward joy. If the person is stuck on a particular series of negative thoughts, ask them why these thoughts are still so present for them. What are they doing for them since the events that inspired them happened in the past, sometimes years in the past? There's usually some guilt and shame involved there that leads them to blame themselves, so they're afraid it'll happen again. And if that's incorrect, if it really wasn't their fault, they won't be able to forgive themselves and have it stick because there's nothing to forgive. Accurate assessment of capabilities, that's a thing. They have to start seeing that past frightening situation accurately and objectively. And if it wasn't their fault, they're going to stay stuck. Based on these last two pieces of bad mental health advice that are totally normal, it probably won't surprise you that number 7 or 3, depending on your counting, on this list is a similar issue of banning particular emotions. Number 7 is don't be mad, don't cry, stuff like that. These are such normal turns of phrase, right? Don't be mad, but don't cry. I hate it when you cry. It's not really mental health advice per se, but these phrases do have an impact on conversations in that you're talking yourself or the other person into misery. If you start a statement with, don't be mad, but, real talk, again, you are priming the receiver of the statement to be more angry at you than they otherwise would be. Every time someone says to me, don't be mad, but, my first thought is, what'd you do? Why should I be mad? Why are we starting there? I'm more primed to be irritated, not less. My anxiety spikes, and I start bracing for bad news. And when you think about it, it's kind of a jerk move to guilt someone in advance about their legitimate feelings. People are allowed to be angry at you. People are allowed to cry, whether or not you have the emotional skills to handle someone in pain without freaking out yourself. Demanding someone turn off the expression of a human emotion or the human emotion itself, don't be mad, isn't cool. Oh, it's just a figure of speech. Stop being so literal, people say. Well, then you're using imprecise communication then. Do better and say what you actually mean. You can't expect people to know that you don't mean don't be mad when you've said don't be mad. Except let's face it, you totally mean don't be mad. What that phrase means really is that you'd be mad in the other person's place, but you don't want to deal with the predictable consequence of your screw up, and that isn't okay. That's going to damage your friendships, lead people to avoid you, and that's the part that's going to harm your mental health. And you may think this is catastrophizing, but every person I know who uses liberal dosings of don't be mad, but is a hot mess with a pattern of rather volatile relationships. So ignore me on this one at your own peril. Okay, we've got 2 more to go to finish off this list of 9 terrible pieces of mental health commentary that have become super normalized. We don't even think about it. We've got 1 more segment. So let's do our final break and come back with the last two. Yeah, totally terrible, totally normal bits of mental health advice. Questions, comments, any feedback, suggestions for a show topic, Liana at nottherapyshow.com. Nottherapyshow.com is the website. At nottherapyshow on social media. Final 2 bits of bad mental health advice you've probably tried to use after this break on It's Not Therapy.
The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca.
We're back on It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. We are still talking about 9 bits of bad mental health advice that have become so totally normalized, so common, almost everyone has used it, felt pressured to do it, and we've done 7 so far. They are: calm down, remain calm. They didn't mean to. Just let it go. Just move on. Forgive and forget. Don't let it get to you. Just snap out of it or control your emotions. And don't be mad or don't cry. Now, the remainders I grouped together, but I kept them for last because these are phrases that I've actually heard therapists use. Number 8 or number 2, depending on how you're counting. Number 2. I actually had a therapist say this to me, and this is how I know why it's really, really bad mental health advice. So the second last bit of totally normal, totally commonplace, terrible mental health advice is just put yourself out there. Just put yourself out there. This is one of the things that was said to me by a therapist that led to active re-traumatization for me. Go out and talk to people. Just put yourself out there. No setting of reasonable expectations. No setting goals based on things I could control. Just put my damned self out there in trauma therapy. It set me up for failure. You know, even though the concept underpinning that bad advice was sound, it set me up for failure. And setting someone up for failure is always bad mental health advice. The sound underpinning was that my world had gotten very small. I was so traumatized that I couldn't have any conversations with other human beings without being terrified that that other human being was going to harshly criticize me, verbally abuse me, or go online or to people in authority and lie about me to try to destroy my reputation. Now, I realized that only happens in real life half the time. That was kind of a joke, right? Just put yourself out there is a colloquialism with a fluctuating meaning. It can mean everything from go out and be social, which is, I think, what the therapist meant when she said it to me, to, be open and honest about your beliefs and preferences, to a specific focus on dating, to self-marketing and promotion. Now, because of this vague context-driven meaning, the concept of just putting yourself out there just to start isn't neurodivergent friendly. Right? Problems go so much deeper than that, though, right? Usually I find things that are not great for neurodivergence are really not great for anybody. And neurodivergence, complete inability to find the start of it is an indication that something's not great with it. Anyone who has just put themselves out there knows that you will fail hard if you don't have some preparation before you put yourself in the out there, right? And neurotypical people can just sort of mimic, follow the leader. Neurodivergent people have to understand the why. So in my case, like I said, the therapist in question wanted me to just go out and be social, have casual conversation. She said, go out to talk to people at the grocery store, the coffee shop, right? The thought, as I understand it was to get some, positive, small interactions that would prove that socialization wouldn't immediately provoke disaster every time. Now, the problem with this is that in some parts of the Greater Toronto area, trying to talk to sales staff gets you treated like a complete freak. And I was treated like a complete freak. People gave me the stink eye. They were here to ring you up, not talk to you, you crazy lady. Backfired hard. I ended up having to adapt, just put yourself out there on my own. It was like 4 sessions of her just repeating, just go out and talk to people. Just go out and talk to people. Like, just fling me back out there, even though I kept saying this isn't working, right? I had to adapt this on my own, not making hundreds of dollars an hour to do it. And what I came up with, totally on my own, is just pay honest, small compliments to people when you can, and listen twice before you talk once. I have had to live since then knowing that just putting myself out there gives the people who hate me and can't just forget I exist another target. But now I know that as long as I'm decent to people aren't going to believe the stalkers who track people down on the internet to claim I'm dangerous, narcissistic, abusive, and I take advantage of young people in an email out of the blue using a fake name. Yeah, they actually do that to guests of this show, And this has happened enough now that at least I know that the vast majority of people, actually all of them when it comes to show stuff, recognize that a super intense, rage-driven email out of the blue ranting about me because they appeared on this program, well, that's not exactly a credible character reference, right? Still, this is what you risk when you put yourself out there in current year, right? Someone trying to absolutely destroy you for no real good reason. You were just there to pick on. And you have to be in the headspace to navigate that before you make the attempt, because, that's just the reality of the modern internet-driven Elon Musk AI making deep fake, spicy pics of minors. That's the reality that we currently exist in. It's not good. It just is. And therapists shouldn't be gaslighting people about what it's like out there. And ideal therapeutic practice should be moderately uncomfortable, not incredibly terrifying. Because if it doesn't go well, as it always can with other people, it needs to not be the end of the world. Now, the final terrible piece of utterly terrible mental health advice that is way too common is one I used to use all the time, and I've dropped it because I've been persuaded that it is not only awful, but it's completely inaccurate mental health advice. So the last one we're going to talk about today, number 1, number 9, whatever you want to, read the room. Read the room actually has a defined meaning. It means to gauge the mood, attitude, and atmosphere of a group of people in a specific setting to act or speak appropriately. And that's basically demanding that someone mind read, or at least strongly infer what's in people's minds. For publicists, politicians, party hosts, other folks, speech writers, who, it's some sort of job to be able to infer certain trends from a mental health perspective. Again, this is from a mental health perspective. Read the room sucks. Let me give you some examples that show you why. Women are expected to smile and fake happy, even when we're not feeling it. We're socially encouraged to throw off the read the room, right? We are throwing off the reading of the room by smiling and faking happy. When we are not happy, we are actively hiding that we are not having a good time. This is hard to pull off, and the truth slips out sideways. So someone reading the room may note that we're uncomfortable, assume it's about them because they're seeing it, and withdraw from us, even though, what would help would be a friendly ear, right? Read the room. How? It's one person in a whole room. What the heck? Another example that I think is really more poignant, right? Many, many men don't open up to their friends about their struggles, especially when they're really struggling, because they don't want to kill the vibe of the group. This is reading the room, but it doesn't factor in that their friends probably don't want them to fake happy on their account. Yes, you're correctly reading the room that it may kill the vibe, but it's okay to kill the vibe if you're really struggling, right? What it really is, what read the room really comes down to is listen twice before you talk once, right? Just really take in what you're being told and what you're not being told. I know a lot of neurodivergent people freak out about body language, but usually, unless someone is being totally passive aggressive, in which case it's awesome that you missed that. But, if someone's just being catty, it is really better to not pick up on that. Work, toxic workplaces, yeah, aside. But honestly, just listen twice before you talk once. Ask some questions if you're not sure about something. That is always better than jumping to conclusions about the why of the room, right? And we're out of time. Questions, comments, any feedback. I'm curious. Liana at nottherapyshow.com, nottherapyshow.com, at Night Therapy Show on socials. Ran this one right down to the wire. You're crazy is only a problem if it's hurting you. See you next show.